Hello dear children, welcome back to our virtual learning program. We will continue with chapter 6, Life Processes. In the previous lecture, you studied about respiration and the different types of respiration, namely aerobic respiration and anaerobic respiration. So what are we going to learn in today's session? We'll be focusing more on the human respiratory system. Besides that, we'll also look at the breathing mechanism, or we'll be able to define residual volume, and we'll also be able to describe the role of the respiratory pigment in transporting oxygen and carbon dioxide through our body. So, what is respiration? Respiration is taking in oxygen and utilizing this oxygen to break down glucose to release energy, and the waste product carbon dioxide is given out. As you can see on the slide, I have highlighted certain words or phrases using two different colors other than black. Taking in oxygen and giving out carbon dioxide is highlighted in red, and breaking down glucose to release energy is highlighted in green. This means respiration is a general term which involves two distinct processes. One is breathing and the other one is called as cellular respiration. Taking in oxygen and giving out carbon dioxide is the breathing process, and breaking down glucose to release energy is cellular respiration. Cellular respiration is what you studied in the previous session as aerobic and anaerobic respiration, depending upon whether the organism uses oxygen or not for the breakdown process. Now, since glucose molecules are broken down, which are chemical molecules, since they are broken down, we call it as a chemical process. It is called as a biochemical process because this breakdown process takes place inside the living organism's body. And the final product is energy. So here energy is not used, but it is produced. It is called as a cellular respiration because this process takes place inside the cell. Now coming to breathing. As you know, breathing in, breathing out is taking in oxygen and giving out carbon dioxide. Taking in oxygen is called as inhalation and giving out carbon dioxide is called as exhalation. It is a physical process, hence energy is utilized. Now the organ that is associated with the breathing or the respiration is lungs, along with the help of the diaphragm. So let us look at the respiratory system. Now as you know, all organ system consists of many parts or organs that work together. Similarly, the human respiratory system has different parts and organs associated with it, starting with the nostrils and ending with the diaphragm. You can see a list of organs. Nostrils, nasal passage, pharynx, larynx, trachea, bronchi, bronchioles, alveoli, lungs, and finally the diaphragm, which helps in the breathing process. Now it seems a little complicated when you look at these words, but as we go through them separately, you will understand them better. So starting with the first part, the respiratory system starts with the nose. The opening of the nose is called as the nostrils, which leads into a cavity called as the nasal passage or nasal cavity. Now when you breathe in or when you inhale air, oxygen molecules along with the air enters into your nasal passage through the nostrils. Now this air will also have dust particles, pollen grains, bacteria, etc., which is not required by our body. Therefore, the air that we breathe in must be filtered. And the nasal passage contains cilia and mucus or hair-like structures which traps these dust particles and pollen grain. The nasal passage also warms and moistens the air that is inhaled in. The nasal passage leads into another tubular part or passage called as the pharynx. Now, pharynx is a common passage for both air and food. We commonly call it as the throat. The pharynx then divides into two, first part being the esophagus or the food pipe, which you studied along with the digestive system, and the second part is the windpipe or trachea, which is a part of the respiratory system. So definitely you will wonder whether the food particles will enter the windpipe or not. Now the pharynx leads into the windpipe through a small structure called as the larynx, which we call as the voice box. And at the opening we have a small flap-like structure called as the epiglottis. So when you swallow food, the epiglottis closes the windpipe, preventing the food particles from entering the windpipe. Now the pharynx through the larynx leads into another part called as the trachea or windpipe. So trachea or windpipe is a pipe that connects the pharynx to the next part of the respiratory system, that is the bronchi. Now the trachea leads into two main branches called as the bronchi. Bronchi is plural and bronchus is singular. So you have the left bronchus and the right bronchus, which enters the lungs. Now in this figure where you can see blue ring-like structure and the pink structure, there are rings of cartilage on the trachea and the bronchus. Now cartilage is flexible, meaning it allows flexibility to the trachea and bronchus, and it also prevents the trachea from collapsing when there is no air in it. This blue part shows the ring of cartilage and the pink part shows the cross-section of the esophagus or food pipe. Now the trachea leads into the bronchus leads into the lungs. So the next part is the bronchus. Then as it enters the lungs, it divides and redivides into a network or branches, and this is called as the bronchioles. The bronchioles all end in a cluster of balloon-like structures called as alveoli. Now from the nostrils till the bronchioles, it is only a passage for conducting air rich in oxygen. It is in the alveoli that exchange of gases take place. Exchange of gases, namely oxygen and carbon dioxide, takes place. It is a balloon-like structure which is present at the end of the bronchioles. So how does the alveoli help in exchange of gases? That is what we are going to study next. Or what are the features of alveoli that help in the exchange of gases? The alveoli has a large surface area which increases or maximizes the exchange of gases. An average adult lung has around 600 million alveoli. If you stretch it out, it would be the size of a tennis court. The second feature is that the alveoli is one cell thick. It has thin walls and one cell thick. Third feature is that it has a rich supply of blood vessels, namely the capillaries or the minute blood vessels, which are also one cell thick. And in the first session, you remember, it is easier for diffusion to take place when there is only a single layer of cells. Now, as you can see in this picture, the red here shows oxygen molecules diffusing into the blood capillaries, and the blue over here is carbon dioxide molecules diffusing into the alveoli. Now the bronchioles and alveoli, lungs are sacs of tissues located just below the ribcage and above the diaphragm. We have a pair of lungs, one on the left side and the other on the right side, protected by the rib cage. Now the left lung is slightly smaller than the right lung. It is made up of 2 lobes, whereas the right lung is made up of 3 lobes, and this is slightly larger to accommodate the heart in between. Now the lung is the center of the respiratory system, or the main organ associated with the respiratory system is the lungs. The last part is diaphragm, which is helping in the breathing mechanism. The diagram here is self-explanatory, but I want you to place your hand on your chest when you inhale and exhale to see what happens when you inhale and exhale. When you inhale, your chest expands and the diaphragm contracts and moves downwards, allowing maximum air to enter the lungs. When you exhale, or when you breathe out, the diaphragm relaxes, pushes the lungs, the chest contracts and squeezes the lungs to expel out maximum amount of air. Even when we say we have exhaled out everything, there will be some amount of air left inside the lungs. And that minimum amount left inside the lung is called as the residual volume. Why should there be a residual volume? This is to allow sufficient time for oxygen to be absorbed by the blood capillaries and carbon dioxide to be released. So our question is, how does this oxygen and carbon dioxide get transported in our body? The fluid connective tissue in our body is blood, which you have studied in 9th standard. There are blood cells called as RBCs, or red blood cells, which contains a red pigment called as hemoglobin. Now this hemoglobin is made up of iron molecules. Now when oxygen diffuses from the alveoli into the blood capillaries, the oxygen binds with hemoglobin and is transported to the cells. This oxygen diffuses into the cell and then cellular respiration takes place. After respiration process, the waste material, that is carbon dioxide, diffuses back into the capillaries. Now this carbon dioxide may sometimes be transported with the help of hemoglobin, or it is more soluble in blood, therefore it can be transported directly through the blood back to the alveoli, diffuses into the alveoli and is thrown out through the respiratory system. So we can say the whole process of respiration involves taking in oxygen, giving out carbon dioxide. Second process involves transporting oxygen and carbon dioxide with the help of a respiratory pigment called as hemoglobin to the cells and back to the respiratory system or the lungs. Third process involves the breaking down of glucose to release energy. At the end of the session, I have a few questions over here. Please read your textbook and answer these questions. Stay safe, stay at home, study your portions. Thank you.